let's talk about basic standards. If you're taking this course because you're getting ready to enter a college course, or you are entering a new profession, or you have a new job and you'll be doing business correspondence, any kind of writing that you want to do, there is a basic standard that your reader is going to hold you to. It doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are. There are 5 basic requirements that any person at any age is going to be held to by their reader. As a professor, at the start of each class, I let my students know these 5 things. And then outside of these 5 things, I don't grade them on anything that I haven't taught them. So our first several weeks of any basic entry-level college course is going to be learning all the things that we are going to learn in this course, with the exception of these 5 things. These 5 things I expect any students, whether I'm teaching 2nd grade or I'm teaching PhD students, to have these 5 elements, to have these 5 components to their writing. If someone does not have these 5, they start to lose points, and their grade will be lowered right from the get-go. That's why I'm sharing these 5 items with you, because no matter where you're starting and no matter where you hope to end up with your writing, you have to start with these 5 items. If you're not there, if your writing is missing any of these 5 items, now is a great time to stop and dedicate some time to really work really hard at these 5 items. Here's what's expected of every single person with their writing. The bare minimum: capitalization. The first letter of each sentence needs to be capitalized. Now we will learn about common nouns and proper nouns and how proper nouns need to be capitalized, but we're not there yet. This is, in general, if you end a sentence, the very first word of the next sentence, that first letter, needs to be capitalized. If you are in the bad habit of texting too much or writing very short emails or jotting notes and passing notes, and you get in the habit of writing everything in lowercase, now is a great time to break yourself of that habit. It is a terrible habit and it will really hinder your professional writing. Item number 1 that is a bare minimum is that the first letter of each sentence is capitalized, and that goes for every single sentence. Go sentence by sentence through your writing and ensure that the very first letter is always, without exception, capitalized. That is requirement number 1. Requirement number 2 is a nightmare for every teacher and every professor: the single lowercase I. We'll learn about pronouns a little bit later in the video course, but when you have a lowercase I, those are called pronouns, and it gets capitalized. You never will see an I, for me, lowercase all by itself. You'll never see that. That is grammatically incorrect. I know when you're writing or you're typing quickly, and again, we get in the habit of making everything lowercase for speed. However, in writing, especially academic or professional business correspondence, speed should never take priority over accuracy. It is so important to be accurate with our grammar. And rule number 2 is that you need to have an I that is capitalized. When you are saying I love ice cream, that I needs to be capitalized, even if it's not the first letter. You could say John and I love ice cream. That I, the pronoun that takes the place of Amanda, must be capitalized. If you have an abbreviation like I have and you say I apostrophe VE, we're not going to dive into those in the course, but it is a mandatory requirement that that first letter is still the I, and I needs to be capitalized. You have the standalone I that is capitalized, and anything else that you use an apostrophe that you join, still needs to be capitalized. So break yourself of that habit right now of having a single I or an I with an apostrophe and another word joined to it that is lowercase. That is never grammatically correct. The third and final bare minimum requirement that you need to have is going to be no slang. No slang. If it is slang, unless you're writing to your best friend, there's a good chance that your reader isn't going to know what you are saying. It's likely that your professor or your teacher is not 19. I'm not 19. When I have 19-year-old entry-level college students that use slang, I have no way to grade them. I don't know what they're saying. They get a 0. You never want to start off your professional or academic career with a 0 in the mind of your reader. Absolutely no slang. This goes with abbreviations as well. Abbreviations can be proper words like the word because that you've left off the B and the E, so you just have cuz. Cuz is not a proper word. It is not grammatically correct. It is likely not in the dictionary as a proper abbreviation of the word because. Don't abbreviate. Write your words out. If you are in too much of a hurry, or if you don't care enough to write the B and the E before the word cuz, your business client or your professor or your teacher is not going to give your writing the time, any more time than you give it. So if you're abbreviating, your professor is going to skim, and you don't want that. Or your business clients or customers are not going to think that you're going to properly give them the time that they deserve. Don't abbreviate and don't use slang. Spacing. Spacing is a big one. When you end a sentence, you need to put one space between the end punctuation mark and the first letter of your next word. This might change depending on if you're in academics, what program you're in. Through law school, when we did our legal writing, we would put 2 spaces. But that's because the California court that was in our jurisdiction, their rules of court required 2 spaces after each period. That is not a common thing. However, please note that your teacher or professor, if this is for academics, will often give you guidelines. It will be in your syllabus at the beginning of the semester that will tell you, for example, use Times New Roman font, use 12-point font as the size or the height of the font, and they will tell you either single space after each punctuation, each end punctuation, or double space. If they want you to single space after each punctuation, they want you to put your period and then 1 space and then start your next sentence. I have a lot of students that will end a word and then they'll put a space and then a period and then another space and then they'll start the word. That is the wrong way to do it. We don't want to do it that way. Our punctuation always hugs the word that is right before it. No matter whether it's a comma, a semicolon, a period, it hugs this word that it immediately follows, and then there's a space. Your punctuation marks are very friendly, but only to one word. So they want to hug this one word, and then they want distance, right? Like when you go to a movie theater and you go with a significant other and you're cuddled up in 2 chairs right next to each other, but then you put your jackets there, or you put something to give maybe your popcorn or your nachos, and you build a little bit of space between you and the seat on either side of the couple. And this is the same way with punctuation. They're very cuddly, these punctuation marks, with one word, but then they want a space before the next word. So work really hard on your spacing. The last and final of our 5 required items that every person of any age must have in their writing as a bare minimum is going to be paragraph structure. It's really important that you start your paragraph off with an indent. Oftentimes it's roughly 5 spaces, but that is just a guideline. You might be told otherwise. For me, in my classes, with my courses, I tell my students to hit the spacebar 5 times. 5 times is a good starting place to indent for your paragraphs. If you know nothing else on paragraphs and when to end a paragraph and when to start a new paragraph, just make sure that you at least indent the first line of your paragraph. You need to know how to write in paragraph form. On the first day of all of my college classes, I tell my students, and this is the same whether it is for a community college or a PhD program, I have my students write a couple paragraphs. And I want to see if they're able to meet these 5 elements on day 1 before I teach them anything. If they cannot, there's some kind of problem that needs to be addressed. I'm checking to see if they know how to do proper paragraph structure as well as their spacing. All 5 of these required items, I look to make sure the student has these, can meet these on day 1. And again, it's the same if I'm teaching a 2nd grade class or if I'm teaching PhD students. Because technology has changed and our lives have changed and so much has changed about the way we communicate with others day to day, that it doesn't really matter how old we are, we still develop these bad habits. And almost everyone has at least one of these items that they falter in because of a bad habit. So it's really important to identify these right away and to address them before you go any further. So please double check that you are familiar with all of these 5 basic requirements of any writing before you move on. Now there's a short quiz to test your knowledge before moving to the next module.